entitled The Third Angel's Message. And we begin with an introductory text. And it said, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast and his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his right hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. So, do we know what the wine of the wrath of God is? And it is poured out without mixture. And this torment will be with brimstone and fire. Imagine a little matchstick fire burning your finger. How painful this is. And so imagine you have to be tormented with brimstone and fire in the presence of the Lamb, which is the wine of the wrath of God, the wrath of God poured out without mixture. Brethren and friends, this is extremely serious. Extremely serious. And because of that, we need to identify the beast. And we need to identify his image. But we will not be identifying his image today because this presentation would be too long. And we need to identify his mark so that we will be fully aware of what these are and what are the consequences if we decide to worship the beast or to receive the mark of the beast. In Revelation 13, brethren, as I stood upon the sun of the sea, I saw a beast rise up, and this beast had 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horn 10 crowns, and upon his name the names of blasphemy. And the beast I saw was like unto a leopard. It had feet of a bear. It had a mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his seat and power and authority. So you ought to understand that this beast's power is the power of Satan himself. And that is why I said in the last presentation, whatever is taking place is not of human origin. It is not of human origin, but it is principalities and powers, the powers of Satan, that old dragon himself. And I saw one of his head as it was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and the world wandered after the beast, and they worshiped the dragon, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, and who is able to make war with him? Now, in order to understand the concept of a beast, because you would be hearing beasts all the time, and then your mind would be upon a beast. And so it is important to understand the concept of a beast as presented in the scriptures. And when we attend to Daniel 7, Daniel had a vision of 4 beasts. And the first beast was like unto a lion, and it had eagle wings, until the wings were plucked off, and it was lifted from the earth and made to stand as upon its feet as a man, and a hat was given unto it. And Daniel saw a second beast, which is a bear, and it raised itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth, and it's between its teeth. And they said unto it, devour much flesh. And Daniel saw a 3rd beast, and it was like unto a leopard. And it had 4 wings on its back. And it also had 4 heads, and much dominion was given unto it. And then Daniel saw a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and so dreadful and terrible, there was no name given for this beast, exceedingly strong, iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with its feet. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So this was a beast unknown. Now, when we read in verse 17, it says, these great beasts, which are 4, these are 4 kings, which shall arise out of the earth. So immediately Daniel tells us these are kings, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom even forever and ever. So these 4 beasts are 4 kingdoms and 4 kings who rule these kingdoms. But then after that, the saints of the Most High will possess the kingdom. So eventually, it would be ours. Daniel also had a great vision of a statue. And the statue of Daniel, if you read Daniel 2, you will see this great statue. And this statue is synonymous to the 4 beasts that Daniel himself saw. And Daniel saw a rock cut out without hands, and it smote the great statue on its feet, the feet of 10 toes, and the statue was destroyed, and a great mountain came up which represents the kingdom of God. And that is why Daniel was saying that after these 4 beasts, then the saints of God shall possess the kingdom even forever and ever. So the first beast, which is the lion, represented the kingdom of Babylon between 605 and 539 BC. And the second beast, which represents the chest and arms of silver of this great statue, represented Media and Persia between 539 and 331 BC. And the 4th beast, which is the belly and thigh of or the waist and thigh of bronze represented Greece. It represented the leopard with the four heads. And if you know the history, you will know it represented Alexander the Great, which after that, the kingdom was separated between his four generals. And then you have the feet of iron, and that feet of iron represented Rome between 168 BC and 476 AD. So these four beasts represented these four kingdoms. And these kingdoms, they rose according to the vision that Daniel had, precisely the vision that Daniel had. When we read in Daniel 7 verse 8, he said, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in the horns were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. And that represented the papal power, papal Rome, which rose to its peak in 538 AD, and it destroyed three of the Roman countries, because Rome became divided into 10 countries, and that is why you have the 10 horns. The 10 horns on the beast represented the 10 countries, and the 3 horns that were plucked up were the Heruli in 493 AD, the Vandals in 554 AD, and the Ostrogoths in 558 AD. So this horn represents the 8th horn. If you notice, it is the 8th horn because it destroyed 3 horns and it became the 8th horn, which represents papal Rome. Now in Revelation, as we saw, and I stood upon the son of a sea, and I saw a beast rise up, and this beast had 7 heads and 10 horns. We saw, and it was like a leopard, and it had the feet of a bear and the mouth of a dragon. So if you notice the beast has a feature of the 4 beasts that came before it. And that is to say that it is not one empire, but it is the previous 4 empires working together. They are working together, but they are not one world empire. So that is why these four beasts, that beast represents, as you can see, has a feature of the bear, the feet of the bear, the head of a lion, the body of the leopard, and the 10 horns. And it has the 10 horns of the fourth beast, which was Rome, which became papal Rome after 3 horns were plucked up. But if you notice here that this final beast empire, it does not have 8 horns, but it has 10 horns. So these are the 10 horns of the beast. And I saw one of his head as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. So, which head of the beast that was wounded? Again, it was the Roman head with the papal authority. That is the head that was wounded on the beast, according to Revelation 14 and verse 3. Now, when we read in history, it tells us that General Berthier marched to Rome, entered it unopposed on the 10th of February, 1798, and proclaiming a Roman public, demanded of the Pope the renunciation of his temporal power in 1798. Upon his refusal, he was taken prisoner, and on the 20th of February, he was escorted from the Vatican to Siena and then to Setosa near Florence. The French declaration of war against Tuscany led to his removal. He was escorted by the Spaniard Pedro Gomez Labrada Marquis of Lambrada by way of Pana and he was brought to Valence, the chief town of Drone, where he died 6 weeks later after his arrival on the 29th of August, 1799, having then reigned longer than any pope. So history tells us that papal Rome was removed, but not destroyed. So this power was removed, but not destroyed. And so that is the head of the beast that was wounded. And now, this appeared in the New York Times. And it said, Vatican and Italy signed pact, recreating a papal state. 60 years of enmity ended. France chained the street. Acclaimed Gaspari and Mussolini, signers of free agreements. And this happened in Rome on February 11th. And it says the Pope is again an independent sovereign ruler, as he was throughout the Middle Ages, though his temporal realm established today is the most microscopic independent state in the world, and probably the smallest in all history. The New York Times, February 12, 1929. So in 1929, the papacy again was once recognized being the smallest independent state. So the Lateran Accord of 1929 was a complex set of documents, and it had 3 separate agreements. A treaty between the papacy and the state was signed first, whereby each side recognized the other's right to exist. A concordat was then signed. This laid out the working relationship between the church and the kingdom. And finally, a financial convention was signed, which compensated the Holy Father for the lands that had been confiscated during unification. So Vatican City was born. And the New York Times, even the very paper, which we see a picture of, says the wound of the beast being healed. So this actually began the healing of the beast. When we read in Revelation 17, it says, there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great war that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So this final beast that we saw, which are the former world empires working together, there was a church riding on the beast. And once you're riding on a beast, it means you're controlling the beast. So this church controls the beast. So it is no longer one horn destroying 3 horns and becoming the 8th horn, but rather the woman, which is the church and the papal power, rides and controls the beast, which is the final beast empire. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet colored, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And we have identified these filthiness and abomination as the false teachings and doctrines of this Roman Church, which has filtered down to the Protestant churches of our time, such as Sunday worship being one of, and Sunday Sabbath being one of the greatest abominations and filthiness of her fornication. So upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots. And we have to note that if this is a mother, then a mother has many children. And so the many Protestant churches have become the children of the mother of harlot, so much so that after 500 years of Protestantism, the Protestant churches and the Catholic Church came together and they said that we have nothing more to protest about. So there is no protest anymore between the Church of Rome and the Protestants. So they have become one. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and the blood of the martyrs. And these occurred during the Dark Ages, during the reign of the little horn from 558 to 1798. If you read about the Dark Ages and the Holy Crusades, then you would understand the prophecy of the Revelation, how it was fulfilled. And the angel said unto me, wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which have the 7 heads and the 10 horns. So the beast that thou sawest was and is not. It was and it was wounded to death. So at the time it was wounded, it was not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, which means to say this beast will rise again, but not by its own power, but by the power of Satan and of the dragon, and go into perdition, which means it will go into destruction. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. And here is the mind which have wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen and 1 is. So which means to say at the time that John the Revelator, at the time that he received the vision, the 6th king was in power. So 5 kings had fallen. 1 was, and the other was not yet come, which is the 7th. And when the 7th comes, then he must continue for a short space. And what a short space really means, he will continue for an appointed time. And what happened is that at the time John got the vision, Rome was in power. That is about 70 AD or 90 AD, thereabout, between 90 to 98 AD. Rome was in power, and Rome was the sixth kingdom. But what had happened before Babylon, because we saw the four kingdoms of Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, and Rome. But before these four powers, you had two other world empires, and that was Egypt and Assyria. These are two other world empires which came before the four beasts of Daniel that we saw. The seventh that was to come was papal Rome. We saw that because we saw the little horn with mouth like a man speaking great things and blasphemy. We saw it rise up as the seventh power, and Revelation 17:11 see, and the beast that was, which is papal Rome, and is not the time that it was wounded to death, even he is the eighth, and is of the seventh, and goeth into perdition. It means to say that the seventh is also the eighth. And so the seventh rises as the Antichrist with the power of the dragon. And so we saw the beginning of the healing of the beast in 1929. And if we go back to 1929 thereabout, you will also notice that from the time of the healing, the beginning of the healing of the beast, until Pope Francis, from Pope Pius XI to Pope Francis, Francis is the eighth king. The eighth king from the time that the beast began to heal. And so, in my view, this does not only pertain to the seventh kingdom and the eighth kingdom. In my view, it also pertains to the eighth king, and in my view, that makes Pope Francis the last pope. It makes him the last pope and also the eighth king. Now we have identified the beasts. I hope we are clear. Now we'll identify the mark of the beast. In Revelation 16:2, Revelation 19:20 and Revelation 24. If we read these three passages of scripture, what it says is the mark of the beast, the image of the beast. In Revelation 16:2, it says the mark of the beast and his image. These are people who receive the judgment of God in Revelation 16. Revelation 19 says, they that receive the mark of the beast and they that worship his image. So again, 19:20 speaks of the mark of the beast and the image of the beast. And Revelation 24, where those who had gotten the victory would reign with Christ 1,000 years. It says they had not worshipped the beast himself, his image, neither his mark. So when you understand these three scriptures, you will understand there is the mark of the beast and the image of the beast, and we know the beast himself. So the beast himself, his image and his mark. According to the judgment and the reward that came upon the individuals, it is because again of the mark and of the image of the beast. When we read Revelation 14:11, it says, and the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever, and they had no rest day nor night, who worship the beast and his image, which we already see, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. So the mark of the beast represents the name of the beast. So Revelation 14 tells you the mark of his name. So the mark represents the name. When we read in Revelation 15 and verse 2, and I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast and over his image, the beast and his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on the sea of glass, having harps of gold. So the mark is the mark of his name, and there is a number that represents his name. So if we understand that, we would understand that the mark of the beast is a number. That is what it is. The mark of the beast is a number. And that number represents the name of the beast. When we read in Revelation 13:16, it says, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bound, to receive a mark in the right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. So that is not three things, but that is one thing. One thing. It is a number that represents the name of the beast, which is a mark of the beast. Here is wisdom Let him that have understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666, which is 666 is the number that represents the name of the beast, which is the mark of the beast. So the mark of the beast is 666. That is the mark of the beast. Now, since the mark of the beast is 666, does it mean that you will have 666 in your forehead or 666 written in your hand? I do not believe so. I do not believe that is the case, because I believe that it is not only it is not just a mark, but reading from the Roman Catholic publication, we see that the letters inscribed in the Pope's mitre, we see the name Vicarius Filii, which is Vicar of Christ, Vicar of the Son of God, which means he comes in the place of God. It says Catholics hold that the church, which is the visible society, must have a visible head. Christ, before his ascension into heaven, appointed St. Peter to act as his representative. Upon the death of Peter, the man succeeded to the office of Peter as Bishop of Rome, was recognized as head of the church. Hence, to the Bishop of Rome as head of the church was given the title Vicar of Christ. And that was in the Catholic publication. And so when we convert this name, Vicarius Filii, it comes to 666. So that 666 number, it's a number that represents a man. And the man it represents is the Vicar of Christ. The man it represents is the Antichrist. It represents the Antichrist. And the triple crown, he has the 666 on the triple crown, which means to say that he's Lord of heaven and earth and Lord of under the earth. So we identify the man and its number. Now the number does not go by itself, but there is a system. And there have been some very critical technologies developed in those days. And when you merge together these technologies, it brings together the final beast system. So the advent of computer technology, the elimination of cash through the use of credit cards, debit cards, and smart cards. And if you notice, many countries are on its way to being cashless, Sweden being one of the most advanced, 90-something% cashless. The development of the global electronic network, which forms the basis for the internet, the World Wide Web, the electronic funds transfer, and the advent of biometrics to eliminate fraud by positively confirming identities. So these technologies are paving way for a system where the mark of the beast, which is the number that represents the name of the beast, would work. Now, remember it said that you will not be able to buy or sell without the mark. So potential buyers must be digitally linked with the items that are for sale in an electronic financial system. It must be electronic. And this is important to understand because in order for the Antichrist system to work, digital money must be connected to the digital identification of people and of things. You see, that is how the system can work. So it's not a matter of having 666 written on your forehead, just 666 or 666 written on your hand. How would that allow you to buy or sell, or how would that prevent you from buying and selling? So we see that it is an electronic system, and each piece of technology brings us closer to this beast system. This allows the entire economy to be electronically linked and identified through a system of marks. This whole scenario, as it applies to physical products being sold, revolves around something called barcode technology, which is being used to provide each item with its own unique mark, just as the Antichrist will demand that each person receive his or her own unique mark. And so therefore, if you realize that this barcode technology came on the scene from 1973, and it is a set of marks, bars and marks. But imagine that the first thing a scanner looks for when reading a retail barcode is the number 666. Only after finding this number can it go on to read the rest of the codes. And every item in the supermarket, you cannot sell an item in the supermarket, and you cannot buy an item in the supermarket if it does not contain a barcode. You cannot buy or sell without it. And it has to read 666 before it can identify that particular product. Now, what has happened this barcode was the UPC, or the Universal Product Code, but it has made way for the QR code. So this QR code is a further development of the BIS system. And this QR code, it is two-dimensional. So it could hold information both ways, not one way, like the UPC code. And if you notice this QR code, the three huge boxes that you can see, which has a black, a white, and another black box in the center. If you start on the outer black box, on the side of the outer black box, then you would have white, black, white. You would have white, black, white, black, white, black. So you would have 6. These 3 boxes there represents the number 666. So it means to say that this QR code works the very same way as the barcode with the number 666. This QR code, it also works in conjunction with your smartphone, which allows them to become quick links to many sources of online information or for access to secure locations or services. And this QR code, which is a number, a unique number, which contains the number 666, includes link to websites, product pages, Wi-Fi networks, e-learning systems, V-cards, instruction manuals or companion products, explanatory information about geographic or historical sites, mobile payment systems, obtaining information about drugs on consumer products, for link to e-commerce purchase pages, on poster ads for products, to obtain coupons or receipts, for ticketing, boarding pass, or to learn more about events or transportation, to unlock doors, for inventory management, to display restaurant menu, for attendance in classrooms, and most recently, for displaying validated personal information. And so we see that this QR code has a very wide range of applications, and all the time using a unique number in order to access the system. And most recently, displaying validated personal information, which the barcode did not reach that far.